Make a
Move
motion
to adopt.
In a second. And then all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Okay, so we did have some public comment. There was a letter that we received. So 1.3 and 2.1 are kind of going to blend together. So has everyone had a chance to read through the Shoemaker letter? Yes. All right, perfect. Anybody have any thoughts, questions, concerns, or just anything that they want to bring up with it?
I think the concerns, particularly about the trees, are valid.
We're having trouble hearing you, Jim.
Do you hear me at all?
Yes.
I was just saying that I think their concern for the trees is particularly valid, and I some very cogent and points that we need to consider.
Yeah, the trees have been brought up a couple times, and I just spoke to Huel, and he had said that those trees are actually, they shouldn't be. They're not on.
They're not on the
Grabhorn property.
I suspect they're pretty close to the property line. I haven't seen the survey documents, but they're definitely not on Grabhorn property.
Yeah. I would also agree, and it was brought up by Dana as well, that it creates a very important windbreak for that area. And so I think our recommendation at the end to City Council should still be a talking point, at least, about how important they are for the history of Scappoose, their meaning to that family there, and for a windbreak. So I would agree that I think that's an important point.
Yeah, my
I seem
question.
to recall.
Regarding this letter, my question.
Go ahead, Jim.
Sorry, no, I was going to say there seemed to be some question about a potential conflict with a right-of-way. So I don't know if that's an issue or not. But yeah, I think those trees are very important.
We'll look into the right-of-way. I don't remember that part. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, so on the May 3rd council meeting, as well as the May 17th council meeting, it was noted that utilities would need to be extended with or without a road for further development. At the same time, it was mentioned specifically development land west of Grabhorn, which is this property. So my question are those utilities still needed, given the owners of the property have no intention of developing? That's the question I have. And secondly is, I'm questioning or asking why it was stated earlier that development in this area was mentioned at the council meetings, while the owner of the property specifically says that herself and the other parts of her family that are also on the property have no intention of developing.
To answer your first question, yes, the utility connection through there is still needed. It's identified in a recently adopted collections master plan from, I believe, January. It's the collection. I'd have to reference it. It's on our website, and I can send it to you. In terms of the willingness of the property owner as it stands today, and their willingness or lack thereof to develop their property, is a question for that property owner. But at some point in the future, development at that property is a potential. I'd have to look back at the housing needs analysis and what the buildable lands inventory for the city shows. So I'd have to get back to you on that answer and where that information comes from. But as far as it stands right this moment, that's not info that I'm prepared to respond to.
Okay, do I have any other, I thought I saw some more hands raised. Do I have any other comments, questions regarding the Shoemaker letter or anything that you'd like to address? All right. So next up on the agenda, we have our city staff updates.
Sure. Yep. So Isaac and I finally were able to meet with the contact from ODFW. It was a brief meeting. I did send out a emailed response to the committee, summarizing our discussion. Just to recap, fish culverts are a mitigation technique, design feature. The appropriateness of them depends heavily on site conditions and the design of whatever is proposed. They would be engaged once that engineering process is far enough along that there's enough technical data for ODFW. Well, it doesn't go straight to ODFW, it would go to DSL first, is what he had mentioned to us. And ODFW gets consulted by DSL. Let's see. And he did caution that fish culverts are expensive. He didn't quantify what they typically cost because it varies depending on the site. But they're certainly far more expensive than a standard culvert that you would see for any other type of facility.
Is that reflected on the budget? What was proposed that said fish-friendly
I
culvert?
believe so, yes.
So the reflected number was accurate?
You're asking the wrong person. Again, the engineering level was 10%, the conceptual plan for that. In terms of what that actually looks like, once engineering is at the 30 or 90% levels, which are the typical points at which, they have the amount of data that they need to move forward to the next phase of the design process. That'd be a question for an engineer. And then we did mention briefly to the wetland and dog park interaction. ODFW didn't have any specific comments on that, but he seemed hesitant, how I would describe it.
In the Cathead area you're describing?
Yes, that's what I was referring to, but he was speaking to wetlands and dog parks interacting in general.
Right. So that will be something that we'll need to, as we're thinking of later on tonight regarding the dog park, potentially then a fish friendly culvert might still be an option, but cathead is maybe less of an option. So thinking of alternatives as we go into deliberation later tonight, that'll be a priority.
And I think in terms of the Cathead property, the only thing that I would mention on that is unlike Veterans Park and Grabhorn, which are centrally located, Cathead is at the far end of the city. And I don't know if that's been taken into consideration or not, but I think it would be that it is far out there.
Okay. Okay. Pool data.
One more question on city staff updates. I just wanted to see if there's anything further. I had a question on, so the Grabhorn property is currently in wetlands and the approximate elevation is 49 feet from the creek to 54 feet at the proposed road. At the same time, the proposed road has a wall or a dig down of a 5 feet 4 inches approximately, which would make the resulting field 49 feet, which is the same elevation as the property that is under wetland. So to speak English, the current Grabhorn property has a slight slope, and to flatten it, it needs to be dug down. And according to the plans, it's going to dig down 5 feet, which puts it at approximately 49 feet. So all these plans that we're talking about putting fields in this area will actually be 5 feet lower than it currently is now. At the same time, the letter that we've read before from the owners of the property next door state that that land is quite wet in the wet months and also has possible springs or something on that property. So I question, or I just want to caution, if the plans are indeed going to be to put maybe athletic fields that need to be flattened, and we're going to be making that land even lower without any engineering analysis, we could be getting ourselves in trouble because of the fact that it's already on wetlands or very close to wetlands, and then digging down even lower. One of the questions I asked earlier via email is, would it be possible to do a rudimentary engineering analysis, be able to find out if you dig down 5 feet, will this property be consistent with athletic fields?
So I would, I guess, ask a follow-up question to that. Do we have to dig down to level it out, or using the cut fill balance, would we be filling in to level out?
The reason that I believe they made a cut was because you have to make fills in other places to, in the plan you saw there are other things like the dog park fill, and right, there's a culvert, so that is filled. You've got the road fill, so to make the cut fill balance, they did have to cut. So this was just as an initial blush, it was a way to balance it. I would state that that process was used on the Veterans Park property to make the baseball fields. It's similarly situated. We can assume that it was probably similarly wet in some places. So it's the same type of thing that happened in Veterans. Those fields are also fine.
Although I will state that the floodplain is a lot different on the baseball area than the proposed soccer fields.
That's fair.
And at the same time, I believe your question, I don't think we can fill that close to the creek either. We'd have to bring that retaining wall very close to the creek, which I think would also cause some other issues. This isn't just talking to people that I've asked, and they believe the natural aspect of it. So anyway, my question to you guys is, maybe we could do an analysis or pay for some kind of funding or very simple to look at that a little deeper before we go too much farther. Maybe it's not possible, but I'm asking if we could probably do that.
Certainly pass it along.
Thank you.
Tim, go ahead.
Just offhand, referring back to Veterans Park and the fields there, the ball fields did get wet last year. The water was all the way up into the outfield there. And if you do take the level of Grabhorn down by 5 feet, you're basically just creating that much more wetland. It seems to be the immediate effect.
Okay. Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, just to, Dana's not here, right?
No.
Okay, so I'm trying to explain what she told us when we went out there with her and kind of visualize the property. The wetland designation is more about like the type of soil and drainage, so it's not necessarily an elevation thing. Like when they did the initial wetland kind of dig pits, like some of the wetland areas were just like 20-foot circles that were actually a higher elevation than areas that were not. So I just wanted to clarify that, flood zone is different than wetland. Just because something's closer to the river doesn't mean that it's a wetland.
Nicole is here as well. If who she might also be able to speak more on that. Although I think that was clear, but just in case Nicole wanted to speak up as well. As far as so Rocky or Brian, would you guys like to speak regarding your thoughts on fields in those areas?
Yeah, this is Brian.
Go ahead, Brian.
I don't have much comment. I mean, if it's truly gonna be underwater, then that doesn't make sense to put athletic field. So I think that the idea of doing a study to see where that, what it would be for water level there, if we did have to dig down, is pertinent. I don't, we don't want to get in the situation where we build a soccer field or a softball field and then it's not playable. We've got that situation at the school property on 6th Street in the springtime. So I think that we want to, take that into consideration for sure.
Okay. So one of the things that we can do with this is phase this. So we can begin to think about, okay, what would we like to do really initially? Do we want to just start building a trail? Do we want to look at park benches and have that be just absolute phase 1? And then maybe just in phase 2, 3, have those, soccer fields, potential splash pad, softball field, as we get more information. So, I mean, those are potentials as well. And just knowing that some of it may not be feasible, but we can start really small. And that is, I originally feel like that's what part of the original plan was phased. And so that may be what we have to do as we learn more information regarding wetlands and flooding and everything that we're learning.
I guess I would just say one thing to that flooding stuff. I mean, there is a house down there on the creek and there are people living in there. I'm assuming it's not getting flooded out. Or they wouldn't be living, the city wouldn't be letting people live there, correct? I mean, I know we're talking about digging stuff down, but they've got to be closest to the water level of everybody, of everything we're talking about.
Correct.
Just as a statement.
That's probably very accurate for that person. I don't see issues with that on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we ready to move on, or do we have any other comments, thoughts, concerns? All right, let's head into the pool data discussion.
Sure. So essentially, I'm going to just try to explain tonight where I came up with the numbers, because that seems to be where the focus is in terms of the estimated costs for the maintenance of the pools. And please stop me if you have questions. So when we were estimating the cost for the pools, our original drafts of the survey did try to get down to the granular level, where we had a different question for indoor pools that had a tailored cost for an indoor pool, and then a question for an outdoor pool that had a tailored cost for an outdoor pool in terms of the maintenance. And the questions that we developed were about 3 paragraphs long. And one of the things in survey creation is accessibility. And we were concerned that having a 2-page survey was going to turn people away from completing the survey. And our directive from council was to get a robust response. And so as we were going through the stages of survey development, we were directed to reduce the survey length and to use an average. So to get that average, what we did is we looked at pools similar to Carleton, like you saw with a $63,000 or $123,000 operation and maintenance budget. We also looked at larger pools, some of them going up to the $700,000, $800,000 operations range. And also we sent out an email with a whole bunch of professional studies about new pools and how much those cost and how much those are to operate. And many of those costs are over $1 million. And we ended up settling on an average cost of pools to be about $500,000 in terms of operations. with all surveys, you know, the truth is they're not perfect and there's always going to be room for improvement and things that aren't accounted for. But it was determined and we were directed to use that specific number by council. So if you look at the minutes for one of the February meetings, the March 1st meeting and the March 15th meeting, you'll see a progression and development of those survey questions, and council directed us to release the survey as written.
I think the one thing I would add to that, with estimating costs for whether it be operations and maintenance or construction for a facility, that you have to look to other examples where it's not necessarily taking into what exactly would the facility look like. You know, there's so many different competing questions tied up with the pool. Is should there be a pool or no pool? If there's a pool, what type of pool? There is a specific type of pool, what should the size of that pool be? What should the facilities and amenities associated with that pool look like? You know, once all of that's figured out, you could drill down to a very accurate estimate in terms of what it would cost to operate that facility. And again, I remember the discussion from council, and council wanted the city to have this survey try to help inform where the public stands in terms of the pool question. And I know that Councilor Haugen had mentioned that at our last meeting as well. So if I missed anything, please correct me.
Thank you.
So I just think that $500,000 per year expense is turning a lot of people opinion in a certain direction. And, you know, we, like you said, we have to look at other places. The Carlton Pool costs $112,000, but for a 2,300 person city brings in $50,000 a year in pool receipts. So their expense is $48,000. I mean, that's 1/10 of what we're saying to our citizens that it's going to cost. Now, the Carlton Pool is a real pool. It's been around for 20 some years. I can go through the budget, and these are the budget numbers that they have. These are the real numbers. We can go to the actuals and where they're budgeting in the future. Another example was the Newport Pool. Newport Pool is an indoor pool. It actually is 3 pools. The large Olympic pool is a walk-in pool for seniors, and it is a small wading pool. Along with that is a rec center that has a large gym, a indoor track facility, and just numerous other amenities. That entire thing to run is $1 million, but they bring in over $500,000 in revenue. So if I take out the pool cost, just the pool cost with the revenue that they bring in, it's $300,000 that it costs the people of Newport for 3 indoor pools. So, and I don't think anyone's asking for a indoor pool complex that have 3 pools, but that is another example. So while I agree and I understand that we made a brevity an important thing, I think the people are really being it's not truthful in some ways, and it's causing them to not have a great picture of what it's going to cost. So that is my biggest concern. I put together the Facebook post on the July 10th meeting, and this is for the open house that we're going to have. And there's literally people saying, well, it says $500,000 and that's going to cost us X amount per year, blah, 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 blah. People are taking this literally. So my concern is we're not being truthful to the citizens.
Yes, Joel.
I just wanted to kind of build on what Huel was noting, that the council went through several meetings here to determine, to make this, to kind of help the city staff formulate the survey. And we specifically did not ask to use user fees. And in hindsight, we probably should have. So we should have factored that in to make a more realistic overhead cost. And unfortunately, we didn't think of that.
Well, so to council's point though, we can't always assume that we're going to have revenue. I mean, things just got shut down for a year and a half. Those costs would have been deferred to the city. And people, for several months, people weren't allowed to use the pools, but costs were still happening. Costs were still being incurred, but there were no revenues coming in.
Majority of the revenue, the expense at the pool in Carlton is personal services. So if it was closed, $68,000 in personal services. That means lifeguards, et cetera. So that is gone. The materials for chemicals, whatever, that's gone. So if we have another pandemic, they didn't spend that much last year. I mean, we have 20 years of history in the Carlton pool. So we have real data here.
I see that there is real data, but there's also other projections that were in some of the other articles that were saying that some of these pools were actually projected to cost $300,000 a year for new builds. It depends on the demographic. It depends on the minimum wage. It depends on labor costs.
I think looking at articles in the paper is fine, but what's great about Oregon is that, in most states, is that you can go and Google the budget on every city and look at every expense. And I've got it right here. I went and took the time to make my own spreadsheet. I have it right in front of me. And it's not just 1 year. You can go back as far as you want. There's no time that the Carlton pool cost them $500,000. My point is, I understand that we have to make some assumptions, but we're so far off with what we're telling the the citizens, that it is affecting their judgment. That is my concern.
So I have one question about the duration of the increase in property taxes. So as I was reading the survey, my interpretation was that these would be tax increases that would go on in perpetuity to cover the cost of the pool. Is that an accurate reading, or is there a sunset on this?
So for the construction costs, which would be in this instance funded hypothetically out of a general obligation bond levy, those do sunset. They're based on the structure of the loan. Essentially what that is it's voter approved debt. So depending on the amount, you could go for a 10, 15, 20, or 30 year amortization schedule, which after the bond has been paid, that falls off the property tax rolls. Now, for an operating levies are there for 5 years, and then the voters have to be asked the question again whether or not they're willing to reauthorize those funds for that tax. So no, I mean, it wouldn't be in perpetuity. If we're talking about funding operation and maintenance costs, and you have a levy that's providing whatever amount of money it is, if it doesn't get reauthorized by the voters, then there's a big gap to fill. And I think in terms of the long-term viability, even medium-term viability of operating a pool facility, that is a serious question. What exactly are those costs going to be? And how feasible is it to continue funding them 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road?
So the cost of construction is rolled into this dollar figure, but that would not be the increased property tax, or that would not represent the true property tax increase long term, because there would be the construction bond would fall off, right?
Correct.
In like 10 years. And so I think that's also not clear in here, because people might be thinking kind of like I did when I was reading through this survey, like, gosh, I would be committing to be paying $609 a year for every 300,000 forever, or the 327, for every $300,000 of property tax forever. So I think that's a point that's maybe not clear as well.
Yeah, and that was the discussion that was had at council is how do you convey, I mean, because we're talking about, those are two separate voter authorized measures on a ballot. And how do you talk about, what's an operation levy? What are the terms and conditions of, local option levies, or in this case, an operating levy, versus a general obligation bond levy, and what effect those have on property taxes, right? So operating levies subject to property tax compression, like Isaac had brought up and Dana had brought up briefly at the last meeting. They're subject to being compressed. General obligation bonds, those are not subject to compression because it's debt that is owed by the city to a financial institution. And so there has to be the guarantee to repay it. So there are nuances there that are different that I agree is incredibly difficult to convey in a short survey. So.
Thank you, everyone. Isaac, or Hugh, no. I still would like to see the data and to see what information that we receive. When are we able to see that?
July 19th.
Perfect.
I mean, the packets will be available, 4 or 5 days before that meeting.
Okay.
So expected around the 14th.
Okay. Anybody out there like to discuss or weigh in? All right. Then let's move on. So the public forum. So that is coming up July 10th at 4 o'clock. I have received, so I sent out an email with the hopes to get some feedback on what people would like to see, if they have ideas. And I received one reply. So what I would kind of like to convey to everybody is I would love to see this public forum as an option for more people to be able to speak and have our members be able to speak to them regarding what we've learned, why this process is important, and really give the community an opportunity to really feel like they've been heard overall. So I would like anybody who is available to at least be able to attend, so that we can have that many people there answering the questions of the public, taking that feedback. I think it'll be really, really valuable for us to hear the citizens and what their thoughts on what we've come up with so far, and an opportunity to engage the public with some of the things that we have really discovered along the way. I think it increases the transparency of the city and of the forums, and this also gives an opportunity for people who can't make it on weeknights at 6 to come to a Saturday opportunity. So we might get in a completely different demographic and new information. So that's just kind of my call to action, is to at least get people to be there to help lead this. I wanted to go over just some of the things that I've been kind of outlining for how I envision it to go. But I welcome any feedback that anybody has. Mary, you got your hand raised?
Yeah, hey, I had a question about, just a minute. I had a question about your email. I guess I was unclear about what you were asking, and unfortunately I haven't had the opportunity to attend one of these in the past, so I don't really know what they look like. But you said that you would like us to ask questions of the community, and I guess in my mind I thought, well, it would be just the opposite, like the community would attend this and for information, and they would be asking the questions. So can you kind of clarify that for me?
Absolutely. I guess my question is, what do we want to know from the community? So not what questions do we specifically have for them, but if we leave that public forum and we say that was really successful, we learned this, we learned this, we learned this. Like, what kind of things are we really hoping to gain from this forum? I mean, some of the things that people that have suggested was, what did we miss? What kind of things are not were not talked about in the survey? What kind of things are we not talking about here that you really want to see? But so we have 4 easels with large pads, and I was going to write, based off of all the information you saw today, what's your top favorite thing that you want to see in the park? What could you absolutely live without? What do you want? What else do you want to see? What are we missing? Just those kind of things, just kind of engaging questions that I'm hoping that we can have at least a good answer from after that forum. So it was just that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for asking. So to go into a little bit, Jim, do you have your hand raised, or is that from before?
Unintentional.
Thank you. So just to go into a little bit of the outline of what I am thinking for the forum, I would like to just have a picture of the original Grabhorn parcel. This was the original design. And I would like to have kind of like I'm thinking poster boards with information on it, but if anybody has any better ideas or then let me know. So then we can have some information on what we learned from our surveys, what we've learned from interviews we've done with sports team leaders, the dog park representatives, the Scappoose Bay Watershed Council, fire and police chief. So information being presented there. And some information regarding some of the biggest topics and ideas that we have discussed. The pool and the splash pad with information regarding like how much does it cost, or we can break it down a little bit more there. We can say, here's some data on this indoor pool, here's some data on this outdoor pool. We can talk about a splash pad. We can talk about how the dog park is being impacted, where our challenges have been. How can we, some ideas we might have about a nature-centered park. And then at the end, kind of have the 4 easels where people can write their thoughts and comments. My hope is to have a member kind of stationed at each poster board area where you can, if people want to come and talk and dive deeper, that dialogue can happen. And then we can kind of discuss our findings at the end. So thoughts, questions, concerns, I would love all the feedback, and feel free to, email me later and say like, this is how I think, and I would love anybody who wants to help and make poster boards. That would be fantastic. But yeah, I'll take all the feedback, but those are my thoughts so far.
Isaac, do we have a budget for poster boards?
I think we have some poster boards.
Fantastic.
But if not, we can get some.
Well, we might need some stuff printed.
Yeah, we can get things printed. So we can do up to 11 by 17 sizes, but if we're talking like something really big, we don't even have a printer capable of that. So anything 11 by 17, just send it to Isaac and I next week.
All right, by July 6th. Or you said you could print on demand. What was by July 6th?
That just gives us a week to respond and make sure they're printed, but everything gets in.
Perfect.
So it could be Thursday.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Thank you.
I just believe the more visuals we have for the public, the better it's going to be.
I agree. Yes, Joel.
Option might be to transport the whiteboards. So take photos, and we've got several whiteboards like. We could transport the whiteboards we have in various offices and use those, take photos of the results, and you'd have them digitally, you could digitally.
Great idea, Joel. Thank you.
Yeah, we could do this one. This is the only one that's movable that I know of. All the others are attached to the wall, but we could do that.
Perfect.
Yeah, we could probably get some from other venues, like the county might have some.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
So just a quick comment on, I really like the idea of gathering feedback kind of in certain buckets. I think
Mhm.
that will help not only, garner quality feedback, but then also help kind of sort through it and understand it.
Yeah.
When it comes to like the big considerations, I do have a concern that the pool could dominate the discussion.
Yeah.
I have seen lively comments like when the survey first went out and people were responding to it, and also some of the comments, around the forum itself. And if we look at, and not to jump ahead on the agenda, but if we look at some of the initial results of the survey of this group, it does not appear that anyone is in favor of a pool. So do we say, I mean, for the sake of the forum itself, do we maybe suggest that this location is not ideal for a pool? It's not something that we would be advocating for in this plan, and that discussion needs to be had more thoroughly at another time, because then we also potentially are perpetuating, if we arrive at the decision that, the survey is somehow misleading, then are we continuing to perpetuate some potentially misleading information? I just don't think we have enough information to talk specific about costs, about design, and incorporate it in this discussion.
I think that's a great topic. I mean, we could, instead of breaking down into costs, we could just say like some of the things that kind of regardless of the cost, we feel like it's currently outside of our budget and maybe not appropriate for this space. I mean, that could be a talking point. And we could say like future considerations would be, we would like to say we have this work with other entities to build the pool that Scappoose wants, not just a pool. So I mean, we could go there. That might be a more fruitful discussion.
Well, I think if you say it like that, I don't want to just kick it the can, so to speak, right? We just say, well, it's not here. I mean, if we went back to council and say we highly recommend that the pool that people want has to be integrated with the new middle school or whatever it is, some sort of community thing, that would be our recommendation.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't say it's our recommendation now, but if that sounds like something we could bring to the meeting.
Yes.
And people could talk about that or say something about that, whatever. And we could back it up why, like you just said, Kim. What I'm feeling is this 1971 also, people are perpetually still pissed off that they gave money back in the day. So if we just, we got to have something. You can't just say, well, we don't have the budget now. That's just like, oh my God, well, we should have made it in 71 then. So we haven't really talked about it that much, but as a group, if we really feel like this is not an appropriate place for a pool, that a real solution, what we found so far, to be integrated into a larger community thing or whatever it is, then we come with that.
Well, so is kind of going into our deliberation and discussion, which is absolutely fine. But what are everyone's thoughts about having that as our formal recommendation?
I absolutely agree.
Yeah. Jim, did you want to comment?
As far as that question, yes, I think it makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to pitch in the notion that, yes, I think the pool will be a topic that people will definitely bring up, hopefully. And I expect questions about the dog park will also be there.
Yes.
But the big question, I think, is still going to be the road.
Yeah.
So by all means, be prepared for that one.
Well, I think that also, if we look into so I was really excited about the data that everyone got back. I mean, I don't want to go too far in advance because I want to come to a consensus about the pool first, but we can talk about the road because I also feel like it's pretty unanimous, our recommendation on the road as well. So that was great. But let's talk about the pool real fast. I want to make sure that everyone is heard. I don't know if we want to go it seems like a lot to go through a vote for every single line item to go in the park, but does anybody not want to have that our formal recommendation for the pool? Right, I am hearing crickets. So that will be our formal recommendation for the pool. Let's move to the next item then, and let's get into some of the other bigger things so that we can, for the hot topic of the road, we can for sure have those laid out how we want that presented at the forum. So for the road, for our survey, we got 11 back, 11 responses, and the
11 out of how many?
11 out of how many members do we have? 14. So pretty good
Nice.
response. Yeah, I was very excited about that. So 0 people supported a 2-lane road or like a through road at Grabhorn. As far as an emergency access road with no through traffic, 7 people answered yes, that they would support that. 2 people said no, 1 person said more information, and then 1 person said that they support finding a different option for connectivity. For the person who said that they needed more information, would you like to
So
maybe?
this is Rocky. I said that. So
Okay.
because I was just, it wasn't quite clear. Is there going to be a gate? Like, how is that going to all work? And so I just was saying, like, it'd be nice to understand that a little bit more in detail.
I think our recommendation would be with, so yeah, no through traffic would be, I think the gate was the best option, right? So that would be, our preference would be that it would be locked, a locked gate. Bollards were not an option, so it would need to be a locked gate.
Okay.
So then we had,
Well, I voted no. One of the reasons is that the fire chief asked for a 20-foot wide pathway. Now, if those of you who have ever driven on a highway, a lane on a highway is 12 feet wide. So this is basically almost a double highway width, 20 feet. So one lane on a highway now is 12 feet. So it's basically another 8 feet. So when we asked the fire chief how many times he would use this road, he said only in catastrophic emergency. So, I mean, a 20-foot wide path is quite wide. I mean, it's a road. It's as wide as the road now, pretty much where we have on the other side. So my concern is basically we're making a road, and that, if it's a path and it's 8 foot wide, that's still wide enough for a car. 10 foot wide, which is the national standard for multi-use path, is 10 to 12 feet wide. That's starting to make sense to me. If we're going to be pushed to 20 feet wide, that concerns me because that turns into a road really quick.
okay.
So that's the number one concern. Second concern is just in general, I don't think we really fully flushed out the need for this emergency access, quote unquote. We have some opinions from the fire chief, but still, I don't really understand today how building this gated area is going to make our lives better and take away park space. You look at the amount of park space, especially away from the creek. If you're going to take 20 feet away, or actually 25 feet when everything's said and done, a lot of space. In dollars per square foot, that's a lot of money that we're putting toward a road that will never be used. Like he said, well, this only in a catastrophic 100-year type thing would he use this. And I look at, today when I drove by on the way to this meeting, the park is completely full of kids. I mean, it's full of people around those roads. It would hardly ever be used. It's going to cost a lot of money to build this thing, or just to have something sitting there. So I'm still of the opinion that we haven't flushed it out 100%.
So with that, and I think we can continue to work on that. What do we have thoughts on how like we would like that discussion to go at the public forum? I agree. I think we can continue to discuss this and we don't have to have a final answer tonight. But I would like to know when we are discussing it. I mean, it is going to come up. It is going to be a popular topic. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, and somewhat in the same vein. I tend to agree with your comments on that. But somewhat in the same vein, if you're going to put a 20-foot road that will accommodate heavy trucks, fire trucks specifically, emergency vehicles, where's it going to go? And is it going to have the same effect that putting a traffic road through would have as far as usability of the park itself? We're talking about switching one road for another. The only difference being that the other won't get the same kind of use.
Yeah.
And at the same time with the dog park, once we put that emergency path in, that means the dog park has to move. And we do not have a location for where the dog park's going to go. So it's this puzzle piece here where this road is the linchpin, because once they pull that one, then we have to move the dog park, and then we have issues with, can we even put it there, and how much does it cost to do culverts for the fish and everything else. So there's just a lot of moving pieces in this, and I don't think we've completely solved it yet.
The road, well, I think I said it last time, everything is affected by the road. The road is still the big question for this entire process.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys know, but I mean, I know very little about installation of utilities. If we still must put utilities kind of tracking in that same area as whatever road, is a culvert still necessary? So I guess effectively asking, if we must put utilities in, will that have the same impact on the dog park that a road would?
Don't know the answer to that question. I think it would largely depend on how deep those utilities are. And I'm not qualified to tell you how deep those utilities typically are. I'd have to get back to you on that one.
Is there a way to maybe ask to, get an a little bit more background so we can have a better understanding?
Sure, I certainly can.
Yeah, as far as I can tell, that hasn't been addressed in any way, shape, or form at this point.
Okay. Yeah, that would be helpful to know. Okay, so we can basically share what we know about the options of roads, and I think that would be a fine place to be at this point. That some of the, not even just the road itself, but the utilities as well, because I think that Huel has brought up a few times that the need for redundancy for like sewer lines is pretty necessary. So while that doesn't necessarily have to accompany a road, it is just something to think about. So we can, I think showing up and saying, here's the process that we're going through, here's what we've learned, could still be meaningful. Jim?
I don't know if this has ever come up with council or at any other point. I know when they put the new bridge in on JP West, they added sewer lines and other utilities along with that, and extended them through. As the question of just repairing the bridge, bringing the bridge on Smith Road up to current standards and doing the same thing, expanding utilities and so on, along with that renovation, has that ever been considered?
again, that's another one I'm going to have to defer to our technical staff and get back to the committee on.
Because basically that gives you the access that the people are asking for. It gives you the expanded utilities for that side of town. You know, and we don't have to worry about the road.
All right.
Can I make a comment? I'm sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand on a call in.
Oh, yeah.
This is Monica. I guess I feel like we need to possibly make the recommendation that a traffic study or a study of the need for emergency road be performed. As far as I know, there hasn't been that study, a traffic study being done of emergency response times and, emergency access during catastrophic events. So that would be my suggestion, is that in my experience, when you're trying to figure out what is needed with emergency responses, that you do need to perform a study, traffic study for those. So I think that would be a good recommendation to make.
Yeah, I think that is as well. Isaac or Hugh, has that been done?
In terms of a traffic study,
Yeah.
pertinent or pertaining to emergency services, at this particular site, no.
Okay.
Typically, there are traffic analyses are required. Traffic impact studies are required for most developments. I don't say all because I don't want to speak in absolutes, but no, we haven't done a study like that.
Yeah, I've just seen for other cities, like an entire citywide emergency response time study, and those were to identify where do the fire stations need to be located in the city. So for bigger cities, but that's what I'm kind of referring to, is a citywide study just of emergency response times, and then also paired with that could be a connectivity, catastrophic event, backup plan study.
Okay, yeah. In terms of a citywide study, in terms of emergency response, there might be. I'd have to get back to you on that one and cite the document and send it to you.
I believe what Jim's referring to is, for instance, where the fire station is now, if you wanted to use this so-called emergency road through some sort of flood, the access would be on the weakest bridge that we have in the link, which is over Smith Road, as opposed, wait.
Yes. I understand what he was.
Yeah, so I think it would be pertinent to ask about, have we ever looked at that bridge and the cost of upgrading that bridge, and is it in the plan or down the road or whatever? That'd be really good data.
Okay, I think that's fantastic input, everybody. We're at 7:00. I would still like some more information for the public forum. So I would like to see if I would like to extend the meeting tonight. So does anybody have any objection to that? Okay, so all in favor, or I guess, do I have a motion to adopt to extend the meeting?
So moved.
All right, do you have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor, say
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, so so what I would like to do, can I task you, Kim, with maybe creating like a couple of like some top bullet points for the pool and the road that you would like to see at the forum? And then as we build on some some bullet points and some things that we're going to have on display, I'll share them with everybody so people can weigh in and comment. But I think I will start tasking people with kind of sharing pertinent information, or creating some bullet points for pertinent information to help take some of the to help disperse the load here. So as far as the road, I mean, I think just exactly where we are, some of the options that we have, the utilities, and some things that we would like to see. So let's move on. So one thing that I saw from the amenity choices was that kind of want to start crossing some things off the list. Nobody wanted to see tennis courts. That was kind of low on the amenities list. And we have tennis courts that aren't always in use. So are we feeling like that could be something that we could take out of deliberation? Right. Anybody object to that?
My comment on that is, I think people will ask about pickleball or whatever. Is pickleball also included in that?
Pickleball was. Oh yeah, there were
Yeah.
four. There were four people. And so is pickleball and tennis always? Not always
Many,
combined.
many times, tennis courts and pickleball courts are very similar, uses the same net, and it can be used with two sets of lines, usually in different colors, blue for pickleball and white for tennis.
Uh-huh.
Not that I play. But what I think we should recommend here is that we create a formal partnership with the schools in order to share resources, very similar to many cities across the United States. And with that, we support the pickleball courts to be a dual use with the tennis courts.
I agree, and that was actually, I think that needs to be probably one of the first tasks that Parks and Rec has outside of GPAC, and I think it will be something that we discuss further on. But we need to kind of figure out where we are at with the school and what their future plans are and field use, and come to a common ground there. I think that going forward, that absolutely needs to happen. So I would agree. I mean, we can also write that in there. You know, again, we can have a slide that says, hey, 46 people wanted tennis courts. We have these tennis courts available. One of our, maybe this land might not be suitable for it. What we want to do next is have this discussion with the school district and see how we can build on this. And if we're not able to, then maybe we'll look to the site in the future.
There are many examples of the shared use agreements. I think I sent you the links that both Seattle and San Diego uses. And it's actually works amazingly well for those cities.
I believe it. I think that we just have to do it. Yeah. Okay. So I think that's so I'm kind of writing down some things for proposals for city council. So building the bridge with the school district, the top priority. Okay. Disc golf. We had one person who said that they wanted to see disc golf there. On that, I think we were thinking that it might not be super appropriate for the property. Thoughts? Did someone, I guess for the person who said that they wanted to see disc golf, are you thinking that you just want to see disc golf in the city, or you want it specifically on this property? All right, well, does anybody have any objections? Because after talking with Paul and just knowing the area, I don't know that it's the most appropriate, even though a lot of people did want it. And again, I think that's a future task for Parks and Rec to find a place for disc golf, but I don't know that it's super appropriate for this property. Do you have any objections to it not, to us kind of taking it off the table? All right. Good. A playground. One of the things that was really, really positive in here was the kind of like a nature-centered park. I feel like most everybody really wanted to see a lot of nature focus. As far as the people who wanted a playground, are we suggesting a nature-focused playground, or a standard playground? Or something that this city doesn't have at all, which is a an accessibility, a pretty accessible, handicap accessible park. Nobody's really brought up yet.
This is Kevin. I would support accessible playground, but also I guess not the non-standard, the kind of more natural looking playground. For playgrounds, I think it would just be interesting and a little bit more successful if it's something unique to the city that actually, visitors want to come and enjoy as well.
I agree. This is Mary. I totally agree with the accessibility. That's a huge need, I think, that we have in the city. The playgrounds that I've taken my grandkids to, I haven't seen anything that's accessible for kids that would have that need.
I know that in Portland, there are some parks that have kind of blended that accessibility with the natural. I think maybe that could be something that we could present as well. I mean, there were some really, like, one thing that I'm thinking of in particular, it's kind of more pathways, but then the pathways have streams nearby that like small little man-made streams, and there's this one where there's like a big mound, and you can, if you're in a wheelchair, it was fully accessible to go all the way to the top of the mound. So I think there's opportunities for that. And I know it's something that's been discussed in the past, but it wasn't in the survey. But I feel like if we are talking playgrounds, I think it's something that needs to be put on the table. You have any other thoughts? Mary, I am wondering if you would be able to maybe come up with some bullet points or pictures of, if you'd be able to research some different type of park amenities that might meet both of those needs. Would you be able to do that before the public forum?
Yes. And would you like me to send that information to you?
You can just send it to me. Yeah.
Perfect.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Okay.
This is Monica. I can help with some pictures too.
That would be fantastic. Thank you. Okay. Before we go through the rest of the amenities, are there any other topics that we want to really make sure are addressed, like that we need to spend the time on before we go through the rest of the amenities, like such as the pool and the road, or any other things that we haven't really discussed yet?
I think one of the things that in some of those pictures it showed in Veterans Park, that upper area being turned into asphalt, and it's overflow parking now as grass. I know there's been some comments that haven't liked that, turning that into a pavement area. I don't know if we need to address that, but I'm guessing that might come up because they showed that in the drawings early on.
It did. Okay. And and I've heard that before. I
mean, I'll just tell you my 2 cents is I think it should just stay as grass, because you're using it for parking now. Why spend money to put asphalt over there just to create a parking lot that then nobody can use other than cars? That's just my 2 cents, but I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Huel or Isaac, do you have a comment from like why the city essentially wanted to put asphalt there? Thoughts?
I think that was to provide additional parking in case of taking parking off of the actual site where the proposed pool was shown.
Mhm.
If, again, as with the rest of this park, if that's a facet of the original conceptual plan that the committee doesn't like, then.
Okay.
One other part of that was during the conceptual plan kind of internal review, it was mentioned, and some of the feedback from the original survey was there was concerns about the speed on Roger Cusera as it is. And so one of the mitigations was to remove that parking along the edge there so that the city could do some various things to slow down the traffic. So if the parking was removed to slow down traffic and create a safer environment, there would need to be parking. So.
Okay.
Did the city change their mind? Because I saw just last week they were installing sprinklers on that area.
That's just for the 100-year celebration.
Keep the cars wet.
Yeah.
That's where the show.
I'd like to remind everybody that plan's conceptual in nature completely.
I think the intention there is to make sure Veterans Park is looking as best as it can, as best as it possibly can before the major event this summer.
Yeah, I was told that they were trying to improve the grass and all up there for the car cruise in that's going to be up there.
Okay. I mean, I think that, I mean, we could present, people discuss it. We can just say, we haven't necessarily come to a conclusion of how we'd like to recommend it, but that was one of the potential reasons why was to decrease parking on the street. But still,
Yes.
yes, we wouldn't necessarily still need to pave it. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, the safety factor with the parking on Cusera Road, which was never, ever designed to accommodate both traffic and parking, I think is the critical factor there for.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that are they thinking that people wouldn't just automatically go up there to park if it were grassy? Like, is that the concern, that they would need the asphalt to know that they can park there?
I have heard that in the drier months, it gets quite dusty.
Oh, okay.
Cars are kicking up a lot of dust.
Okay.
Similarly, in the wet months with the water runoff, like we were talking about earlier, you don't want cars getting stuck in that area. Typically, when we provide parking, it's to provide accessibility.
Okay.
And an observation, living right here, folks have a tendency to park up there before they park where there's parking spaces, on the north end of the park. They park wherever they can that's closest to the ball fields. They don't want to, carry all their gear and stuff longer distances. So that it was my understanding that when that was developed initially, that the overflow parking was never intended to really be overflow parking. It just sort of evolved into that. And now, on any given day, that area is full. The street is full and that overflow parking is full, whereas the north end of the lot is not.
What if we just started putting no parking signs up right now on the street and then begin to make a determination if people then begin to use the actual parking? That be possible? And then see if we need to put asphalt? Am I making sense? Because if people aren't using the actual parking lot, we begin to encourage them to use the actual parking lot.
If you do that, people that are not using the ballpark have no place to park.
Okay, got it. All right, that's good to know. Okay. So, all right, let's go on to through the amenities. Basketball courts. 3 people said that they wanted basketball courts. Again, is this my question would be, is this something that they really want to see in this place in particular, or is this something that they want to see at more parks in general?
Well, I think I said yes to this. This is Rocky. So I did this because in our group, we talked about that being a multi-use area, not only basketball, but it could have been pickle. It could have been a couple different things, right? So that's why I said yes. I just said in general, overall, if you're going to put an asphalt down and make something, why wouldn't you make it to where it fits 3 or 4 activities?
Okay. All right.
I was one of the yes.
Okay. It could be potentially parking, and so that could be another discussion point is is if we do add something in, having it be multi-use.
I found some examples where overflow parking or whatever is actually making it into like basketball courts, but it's also lines to park so that during the day kids can play there or whatever, and then when it's needed, it will be a parking area. I'd like to go to continue on the basketball court. I didn't vote for this, but I don't think there's a full court in town basketball. There is a full court who wants to be a full court at the middle school, which is completely run down and probably not even playable. That's where I go back and go, there's the space for a great basketball court, hasn't been upgraded in probably 35 years. Wouldn't it be great if we actually took that land that's already there and actually made it a nice basketball court?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a valid recommendation. Absolutely. Do we have, and we can, I think for the sake of the forum itself, we can just at this point in time, just have a discussion of, we're discussing multi-use fields and we're also discussing building a relationship with the school district. And we could, at that point in time, leave it at that.
We could give some examples because I think on the other side of it is we need people pressuring the school district to say this is a good idea.
So Paul, I would love to put you in charge of that for for the forum. If you could just have some examples of dual purpose fields and exactly how other school districts do it. Thank you. Great idea.
You're welcome.
Okay. So let's get to we had two others. Two people who wanted to see something else. So I would love for somebody to step up who chose other and let us know what that was that you were hoping to see that we haven't discussed yet. Okay. Well, I'm not hearing anything, so we'll move on from there.
Hey, Kara, it's Mary again, and I'll be honest, I can't remember if I responded other on that survey, but one thing that I have often thought would be really awesome in a park space, and I wished that they had done it for veterans, but you know, we're talking about trails, you know, walking paths, biking paths or whatever, and a lot of parks you'll see where they have these little stations and for lack of a better word, I'm going to call it equipment, but you know, it's like natural things that are placed, and it's opportunities for adults to work out. You know, they'll have you know, like places where you could do, you know, push-ups or just different kinds of workouts that I thought would be really cool, you know, if we had a nice trail. And then, you know, maybe, I don't know, half dozen or 10, it depends on how big the trail is, but these little stations where you stop and it has instructions on, you know, here you do, you know, this type of exercise or whatever. And I think that you could fit that in. I've seen it where they have, you know, the natural setting as well. So I think that could fit in, and I think it would be really cool feature and unique in our city.
I think so too, and there have been some suggestions for that in other forums. So, and I think that we might everybody wanted to see park benches and picnic tables, which I think is fair. Like that would be there generally. But I think we could probably put that in with just like, you know, if we're thinking about, and everybody for sure want to see walking trails as well. So if we're thinking about walking trails, kind of designing them with benches and maybe some and there are the kind of natural workout equipment along the way, just along that pathway to make it more interesting. And sometimes it's just as simple as like something off the ground where you can just do push-ups or a pull-up bar or things like that. I mean, it can be really, really simple. And I think that could absolutely be integrated.
And I think in particular that would work nicely. I mean, it would be hard to place a bunch of them just on Grabhorn, but if we could have that somehow, that concept extend through veterans, and then if the Buxton property ever is developed, they said that the developers would extend some of the property to I guess, a path that would have public access. And maybe that would be something that we, you know, further incorporate down. So it's spread out and it
Yeah.
ties it all together.
Yeah. There anybody who would like to make some bullet points with like the picnics, park benches, and like different workout equipments, and then maybe like some discussion points about how, as the greater Parks and Rec, we'd like to incorporate that into other parks?
It's Mary. I can work on that as well.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so let's get into let's discuss how we want to discuss the dog park. I mean, I think at this point in time, we've had, I think it's really important to lay out all the ways that we've looked at it, how the road potentially impacts it, if we move it, what our options would be. So, I mean, I think we have to make that clear, some of the challenges that we have if we need to move the dog park. Jim?
So as the dog park rep here, right now, when people at the dog park are asking me what's going on and what the plans are and how things are looking, essentially I have to tell them that everything that's being considered, some of it depends on the road, some of it depends on fish and wildlife, some of it depends on wetlands. Everything is, there's a lot of stuff being talked about, and there is absolutely nothing concrete at this point. And quite frankly, that's kind of where we're sitting as far as the dog park is concerned right now.
Yeah. And I think that's how it needs to be presented, is that we still have, there's still so much up in the air. I mean, certain things that we know that, and that we have discussed with the city already, is that there needs, before there is a road, the dog park needs to be moved. That recommendation was made at the last city council meeting, and they are aware of how passionate everybody is about the dog park. And so I think that could be discussed, as well as, you know, if options that we have, other properties, do we create multiple small dog parks? And I think it would be helpful to also have that forum, because I live near Miller Park.
The notion of multiple small dog parks is convenient for somebody that doesn't have a yard of their own.
Yeah.
Beyond that, it's kind of pointless, quite frankly. The whole point of a dog park is a large enough space for dogs to play, dogs to run, for people to throw a ball for 50 yards and a dog to have, you know, I understand the impetus for that notion, but as far as providing a dog park that is a dog park, that doesn't really accomplish the need. And Carrie, you and I had been talking about the what I had seen over at Cathead, and I mean, I would still, before this meeting, love an opportunity if you and I and somebody from the city that actually knows where those boundaries are could go over there and just actually get a good look at what possibilities exist there.
Yeah, I think we can still make that happen.
And you know, beyond that, as far as the dog park at Veterans Park, it's essentially, the existing plans don't accommodate the need. The way the altered plan is laid out, we'd lose 42% of the size of the existing large enclosure. We need twice what we've got, not half.
Okay.
And you know, I mean, it's just all still up in the air with no real concrete answers or direction that we can say things might be moving in.
Okay. Can I task you with making some just prime bullet points of things that we've discovered, like you said, the ODFW issues, the road going through it, like what the dog park needs for the forum?
Sure, I'll put some information together for you.
Perfect, thank you. And then I will see if we can get a meeting scheduled with somebody from the city who knows that area as soon as possible, so that we can scope it out.
That'd be great.
Yep.
Hey, Kara.
Yeah.
This is Mary again. I'm sorry. I was over at Miller Park today, and I just had a question. You know, there's a grassy area there. It's not huge, but I'm just curious to know, what is that? Does anybody know what that grassy area is used for? I mean, there's no. I've been over there several times. Granted, it's usually on weekdays and, you know, middle of the day, whatever. So I don't know what happens in the evenings or on the weekends or whatever. But does Miller Park, does that grassy area have any use? And then the other question I have is, there's another park, and I apologize, I don't know its name, but I think it's off of 4th, and it's it's down off of Scappoose Creek.
Oh, like Creek View.
Creek. Okay.
Yeah.
What is that space for?
Those
yeah.
There's it hasn't really been it's been discussed, but nothing has really been done with it yet. And then Miller Park, I can answer. They use that. I mean, the soccer teams do use that in the evenings. People run their dogs a lot there. And then sometimes people will just have kind of like small little events in there, and it's just an open field for kids run around and play in that a lot.
Just as a note for that open area, there's a catchment basin underneath that spot. So there's a bunch of water runoff that goes underneath, which is why when the park was developed, nothing was placed there.
Oh.
It's not to say that you can't do something there. It's just that we didn't something because of the water catchment underneath.
And then Creekview, we've discussed I think that's on the list to maybe put something small there, like a horseshoe pit or something very small, but nothing. I mean, it's just since it's a smaller park, and it is kind of nice for what it is. We haven't made a ton of plans to do much with it. Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the fields. So there was a lot of support for the soccer field. 7 answered yes, 2 answered no. 1 person said I need more information, and 1 person said they support a soccer field, but not at this location. So for the person who said they wanted more information.
I believe that was me.
Oh, okay.
With just the water issues with regards to it being on a floodplain.
Got it.
Down.
Okay. So I think this was potentially, we could also have the discussion at this point for the forum of, we are working to meet with the city to understand our fields. These are the issues that are at hand. And these are the issues for not having a field at this time. Rocky, what are your thoughts?
I think that sounds great. I mean, you know, again, it's a field. It can take water. I understand some concerns, but yeah.
Okay.
I'm not available on the 10th to be there. I'm out of town at a beach, a soccer in the sand tournament, so I won't be able to help you there. But anything you need otherwise, I can help you.
Okay, I would love to have some bullet points on soccer fields, basically where we're at, what our challenges are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's kind of off of what we. Okay, got it.
Yeah, and then yeah, that would be perfect. Yeah, go and yeah, you can take from the slides that we've already done.
Yeah.
And then does anybody there were some people who did say that they did not want a soccer field. Does anybody want to elaborate on that? And we'll go more into at future sessions, get deeper into this, into how we want to place a field and what's best for this location. But just in case, just so I make sure everybody has a chance to kind of just speak up before the forum. Okay. And then let's go into softball fields. So we had 5 that were a yes, 4 that were a no. 1 said, I need more information. And then 1 said, I support a softball field, but not at this location. More information?
Yeah, it was the same thing.
Okay, all right. Okay, anybody want to, and Rocky, I would also, if I could task you with the same thing, so we can have Brian, so we can have talking points on the softball field. But does anybody want to voice thoughts, concerns that they have regarding the soccer field before the public forum? Again, we'll have ample time for more deliberation.
This is Kevin. I'm just trying to visualize all these things we're kind of checking yes without really understanding the layout on. Are we following the conceptual plan then, and just saying that those will be the placeholders, or seeing that since it fits, it could perceivably go there, or are we going to explore ways to organize this park?
We are going to explore ways to organize this park.
Okay.
At this point in time, I ultimately want to know, great question. I ultimately want to know, like, people's thoughts about the softball field, essentially.
Right,
So,
like the priorities or the
exactly.
wishes.
Yeah, and also so we can kind of have, I mean, there, if there are 14 of us, if all 14 of us are there, which I know some of you can't make it there, and everyone's asking different questions, and there are different conversations going around, it would be nice to have just kind of like similar understandings of the benefit, like the pros and the cons of the softball fields, and pros and the cons of having the dog park here versus there. So I just want to make sure that we touch on these things tonight, so that we have just as an idea of where everybody stands.
Perfect. Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah. All right. So does anybody have anything that, at this point in time, it's still a discussion point, something that we are potentially bringing into the topic, and we want to present the information that we have. Okay. All right. We didn't really discuss splash pad, but a lot of people were in support of that, as opposed to a pool. 6 people supported a splash pad at this location.
Yeah, what I can do is in creating the bullet points for the pool, I'll go ahead and add some splash pad cost estimates.
Perfect.
I think we'll just get more public feedback.
Perfect. And I think that's the bulk of it, is not just because we discussed, there are some things that we kind of did begin to take off the table because they were low priority. But for the most part, we really just want the public feedback based off of the things that are highly discussed. Go ahead, Jim.
As far as the splash pad, yeah, by all means, solicit opinions and feedback, but we've got a splash pad. It's right there in Heritage Park.
Yeah.
Right by the.
We do. We wanted to make sure that alternatives were presented to in case the pool was less of an option, and so that's ultimately.
Well, you got a splash pad right there by the library and its own little playground.
Yeah.
And it's used regularly.
Yeah. Want to comment on that further? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thinking was that, given that this property was purchased with pool funds, we wanted to at least get some feedback on, does the community then expect to have some sort of like aquatic play feature?
Yeah.
If a full pool couldn't be there.
Yeah. Agreed. Okay. Does I would say expect emails from me over the next week as we prepare. But I think we've addressed a lot of major topics. Go ahead, Paul.
A question, just in general. Could you give me a feeling of what percentage are we going to be talking and what percentage are we going to be getting feedback approximately, like in this meeting?
I'm not quite sure. I mean, ultimately we'll have kind of some information and just be standing by, and hopefully people ask questions. I don't have any plans of speaking, like, you know, like having a speech. Isaac?
Just briefly, so everybody knows, and I just remembered this, the city manager does want this recorded. So when Huel is there, he will be recording.
Okay.
So we can put it up on the website and everybody can be involved that way as well.
Okay.
Apologize.
I think that considering people know that we've been working on something, I think someone has to at least, you know, address what we've been doing, how long we've been doing it, how we got here, what you're about to see, and then what we'd expect in return.
So I think that we could definitely do that. A lot of these people kind of just come and go throughout the time. I mean, I can certainly prepare something and kind of, so at the beginning I can give a talk on like where we started, where we're at, and then like how this might work.
I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah,
cool.
I can do that. It just depends. I mean, like I said, we've had these before where 3 people show up, so but I can be prepared for anything. Joel?
I think you narrate this.
Okay.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's gonna be too amorphous.
Okay. Yeah. I can plan for that.
Good.
All right. So if we have, I think we have a good foundation for what to plan for the forum, and then also some just early things that I know that for our suggestions for city council for our final project. So that's all I have for tonight. Is there anything else anybody wants to discuss before we go? All right. Meeting is adjourned. Have a good night, everyone.
Happy 4th.
Good night.